Chapter 17. What now? Standing motionless, staring at the scene in front of her, Azita could not wrap her mind around what she had just witnessed. How could such a sweet woman, who had just earlier that day welcomed her, an almost complete stranger, into her home with a smile and a hug, now be propped up by a decorative sword through the skull? Azita's eyes went from Sarah to Tyler, who was on his knees screaming in front of Sarah, burying his face in the carpet just inches from her pooling blood. The seconds ticked away, but time had no meaning to anyone in the room. It was merely a concept to judge their life by, and for one of them, it had ended. Azita felt fear begin to creep up the back of her legs, slowly making its way up her spine. Then, in a flash, she was no longer in the basement, but a young child back in Iran once more. The fear climbed even higher. Looking back, she smiled at the sight of her father, and then came the sound of thunder drawing her attention down the hillside to their home. The fear she felt climbing her back reached the base of her skull, sending chills all through her body just at the point she saw her mother fall with men pointing guns at her. "Maman!" Azita said in her native Persian as the long-suppressed memory flooded her mind. "What have you done?" Tyler cried out. His scream of agony was the slap Azita needed to snap her back, pushing her rediscovered memory to the side for a later date. Now it was time to focus on the situation at hand. "Well, this isn't how I expected our first meeting to go," she thought as she looked around the room. Azita knew the first thing was to prevent Tyler from seeing his wife in her current gruesome state. Spotting a black sheet hanging from the ceiling that, from the looks of it, had been used for a backdrop when making videos for his online channel, she reached up and gave it a strong jerk. With it free, Azita walked around Tyler and over towards Sarah. "What are you doing now? Haven't you done enough today?" Tyler screamed. "Okay, so the question earlier was directed at me," Azita thought, stopping beside his deceased wife. "Stop! Stop! Don't touch her!" Tyler demanded while stumbling to his feet. "We need to cover her up, Tyler, and figure out what is going on." Azita spoke in a soft, caring voice. Standing unsteadily with tears streaming down his cheeks, he choked out, "Why? Why did she do this?" His eyes never left Sarah as he spoke. Azita's heart ached for him, and she wanted that same answer. More importantly to her, though, she had to know, is it my fault? That was not a question she dared ask aloud. "Help me cover her, and we will begin looking for an answer to that question." Tyler reached out a trembling hand and grasped the sheet corner Azita held out to him. With it in his hand, he just stood there, his eyes fixed on the sword tip sticking out the top of Sarah's skull. "Tyler," Azita pressed gently. "Tyler, move over to the side." With a little coaching, Azita and Tyler were able to cover up Sarah, but it was of little help as blood crept its way out through the carpet. Hating to rush Tyler with his mourning, she stood silent for a few minutes, during which time she ran through her memories of the prior day's events. First thing she thought about was the anticipation of meeting Tyler for the first time, but that was not the type of thing she wanted to recover. Starting at the beginning of her trip, Azita had watched as nearly all the passengers had boarded when she made her way on board the aircraft. Whenever flying out of D.C. or back, Azita enjoyed scanning the crowd for anyone she might recognize. On more than one occasion, she had acquired breaking stories from politicians or their staff by doing so. That is, when she had the time and was not rushing to board due to being held up by TSA. This flight, like most, had nothing of importance, nor did anyone in the crowd at the airport. As she retraced her steps with going to the rental car booth and driving around the city of Tyler, nothing stood out to her. Eventually, memories lead her to just outside the first place she checked for Tyler, the apartment complex where the other Tyler had been taken down by police earlier. Even with her near-perfect memory, she could not see anything out of place or faces she recognized. Satisfied there was nothing out of the norm, she decided to move on. Pulling out from where she was parked, Azita focused on the driver of a car passing. Still nothing. Maybe there is nothing, she thought. Then she recalled the turn she made leaving the apartment complex when something in the rearview mirror caught her eye. With a gasp, she blurted out, "They were there yesterday!" With a look of disgust and a voice full of hate, Tyler faced Azita and spat, "I am out." Knowing people say things they don't mean while in a state of shock, Azita decided to move forward in the hopes of pulling him from the edge. "I know this is horrific, but she wouldn't want you to give up and die. Sarah would want you to find out what happened and make things right." Azita braced herself for the worst after using Sarah's name, but she needed him to hear what she was saying. Tears continued to speed down Tyler's face, followed by sniffling as he stared at the black sheet. From what Azita knew about psychology, these were very important minutes and would decide which path Tyler would follow from here on out. Even though she wanted to prod him along for a response, she waited patiently. Then he began to speak. "I said I am out." Azita felt her heart sink and stomach tighten hearing those words once again, but before she could offer a rebuttal, he continued. "I am not sure if, like you said, Sarah would have wanted it, but I sure as hell do. If the search for truth is with you or not depends on you." For the first time since he realized she was dead, Tyler took his eyes off his wife for more than a glance and stared at Azita. She understood he was talking about her surprise visit and whether or not it had something to do with what had happened. "Tyler, as you know, I have what is known as an eidetic memory. They were already there yesterday." With slight hesitation, Tyler responded, "Where?" "At the first house I visited in search for you. As I was pulling away, I saw them in the rearview mirror standing at an apartment door." "These same two men," Azita stressed, walking over and pointing at the monitor with two men standing in the doorway of his home. Tyler slowly turned to face her direction, looked at the monitor beside her instead. You can't be sure it was the same two. "Not many people dress like they're from the 50s with fedoras." Azita felt she might have pushed too far with the sarcasm as Tyler stared intently at the screen. With a more natural-sounding voice, he asked, "How do you explain you showing up the same day they decided to come after the same 3 Tylers in Tyler, Texas you chose?" Azita had no logical response and wanted to say, "Shit happens," but thought it inappropriate. "Look, we are not going to get all the answers now, and soon we have to call the police. They will lock all this down, including your computers. What could you have been working on that would have brought them here?" Tyler stood there with a blank look on his face as he continued to stare at the 2 men on the screen. "They are identical." "Hey, we have to get moving," Azita said assertively. "What have you been working on? We need to gather it up before the police get here." Looking from the screen to Azita with slightly drier eyes, Tyler took his seat and began typing. "I need 15 minutes to send everything to my other system." "Other system? He has another setup like this somewhere else?" Azita asked herself, and then wondered how he could have paid for it all. At that point, she figured she would just leave him alone, seeing as he was finally focused on something other than Sarah. 30 minutes later, after notifying the police, Azita listened as one of the officers spoke. "This has truly been a strange day, miss." The last of the officers that had exited Tyler's house stated while applying crime scene tape to seal the door. Azita couldn't help but study everything around her as people gathered to see what was happening. She also ensured that Tyler had remained in her sight as much as possible over the last few hours of police questionings, questions for which she was not able to provide a great number of answers, at least none they would believe. "Yes, it has," Azita responded while scanning the crowd once again. Deep down, she felt great sorrow for Tyler and prayed she truly had no influence on the day's tragic events. The ability to compartmentalizing her emotions during times such as these had always been helpful, and apparently in some cases, such as her mother's death, it worked a little too well. "About time," she remarked when she noticed the officer parting ways with Tyler. The last time they had spoken was right after making the call to 911. It just so happened that there was a squad car in the area, and it responded within a few minutes of making the call, much less time than they thought it would have with 2 other major events happening just hours before. With so much time having passed, Azita had no idea what state Tyler would be in as she walked toward him. She hoped he was still on board with finding out what was happening, but knew a great deal could change in a few hours after such a great loss. Just then, her mind wandered what had happened to her father the hours after her mother was murdered. Could it be possible for that memory to return now also? That, too, is for another time, Azita thought as she approached Tyler. Stopping a few feet away so as to not seem pushy or overbearing, she waited for him to speak first. Watching him, as he stood still with his head down, not acknowledging her presence at his side, she felt he might have lost the drive to move forward. They stood there silently as the last officer slid into his car and pulled away. Then, just as the police car turned the corner, she witnessed what could only be described as a light switch of emotions being flipped. Quickly, Tyler turned to her. "Where is your car?" This was clearly a Tyler she had not heard before, speaking clearly and with purpose, something much more than she had counted on. She pointed in the direction of her car. "Where are we going first?" Azita asked. "I'll tell you in the car." Tyler grabbed the bag the police had allowed him to pack before sealing the house up. Azita could see reporters in the crowd waiting to speak with Tyler about his wife's death, and neither of them wanted that. She smiled over to the reporters, waved, and then pointed to the other side of the yard where a picnic table sat. With their attention all on her, she held up all 5 fingers of her right hand and mouthed the words, 5 minutes, while giving the thumbs up. Having worked as a daily reporter for many years, she knew they would seize this opportunity and fight to be first to the location. "We need to go now," Tyler said impatiently. Slightly holding up her hand, motioning for him to freeze, Azita watched as a crowd closed in behind the reporters, blocking their line of sight to Tyler. "Okay, follow me," she said, waving Tyler to follow with the same hand. They quickly crossed the yard, made their way through the crowd, and crossed the street to her truck. With keys ready, Azita jumped in the driver's side as Tyler ran to the passenger's side. They were moving down the road before even one reporter could make their way back through the crowd. "We have to change trucks before going anywhere," Tyler said in a demanding voice. Azita knew there was no chance of driving a new truck to where they were going, not with all the electronics it contained. Before she could agree, Tyler began listing all the reasons. "This thing has it all. Fully integrated computer system, GPS, OnStar, phone, and Bluetooth. Did you know they started installing a box in all vehicles that can track every mile you travel in anticipation of taxing you for every mile you drive? Just another way to get people off the roads and pushed into big cities with public transportation they control." Something about what he said clicked with her old article on the dilapidated usefulness of major cities. Azita's mind began to wonder about the possibilities of the two being connected, but after a few seconds decided now wasn't the time. "I have an idea. Till we change, no plans are to be spoken." After driving around Tyler, Texas for half an hour, the sun beginning to set on the horizon, Azita found what she was looking for. Pulling into the parking lot of a country bar, Tyler began nervously looking around. "What are we doing here?" he asked. Azita opened her door and looked over to Tyler. Somebody is getting ready to enjoy a test drive. With a smile on her face, she shut the door and made her way into the bar. 10 minutes passed as Tyler watched people entering the bar, a place he never imagined himself entering till today. He felt a change take place within himself once he made the decision to investigate what happened to Sarah. For now, he just wished he could envision something of her other than her plunging the sword through her head as it played yet again in his thoughts. "What is she doing?" Tyler asked himself, thankful for the distraction as he spotted Azita exiting the bar, followed by an older, rough-looking man. "Why is she bringing him over here?" Azita walked the man from the bar all around the truck, showing him many different features before opening the driver's side door. "Henry, this is my partner Kevin, the one that I talked about inside. Remember when I told you about our truck hunt letting die-hard Chevy drivers like yourself test drive the latest model for a week?" Surprised but quick on his feet, Tyler played along the best he could. "Henry, you are going to love this model. It has everything to keep you from getting lost." Winking at Tyler for catching on, Azita directed her attention back to Henry. "Now, Henry, all I need you to do is sign this user agreement stating you will give us your thoughts of the truck, what can be improved, and what was most useful to a hard-working man such as yourself." Reaching into the center console, she pulled out a document and pen. "I sure will, ma'am. Nothing like this has ever happened to me. I never win anything," Henry said excitedly, not reading the paper Azita presented to him, but signing where she pointed. With a big smile on her face, Azita finished the deal. "Well, Henry, I hope you enjoy it. Now we just need the keys to your truck so we can get back to the dealership. We will just meet back here next week, same time. How does that sound to you?" Not saying another word, Azita held out the keys to her rental truck and exchanged them with a very excited Henry, who looked at Tyler as he climbed into the truck and said, "If you're not coming with me, you might want to get out now, son."